As we transition from fall to winter grazing here this week, in a few more paddock moves, we'll be up there in the field where I put the round bales out for winter feeding. But I've had the cows on my mind a lot here this fall, so let me get the cows moved and content, and we'll get into some cow content. Choosing the right cattle breed is a pretty critical step for a small homesteader. We chose Dexters here at Homestead Citadel because the Dexter breed is the smallest non-dwarf animal. When you start getting into genetic mutations such as dwarfism, you're asking for issues. For us here at the Homestead Citadel, the Dexter breed has exceeded all of our expectations. We got into Dexters because they are known for being hardy in winter, so we don't have to worry about any sort of barn setup, although we do have a barn we like to feed out on pasture as much as possible. They thrive on grass. We have not fed any of our Dexters any amount of grain whatsoever. They perform exceptionally well using nothing but grass. And having a smaller framed animal like a Dexter allows you to finish the animal a little bit faster. The larger frame size a cow gets, the longer it takes and harder it is to properly finish a grass-fed animal. And while we don't do it here, the Dexter breed is known for being a good quality homestead milk cow, producing a manageable amount of milk, not overwhelming or not, significant like a Jersey or Holsteins or other, well-known dairy breeds. But the Dexter would certainly meet our expectation and our daily consumption for a homestead milk cow when and if we choose to go down that route. So with that, we'll dive into some of the things we learned in our research, and we'll cover some tips on where to find quality animals and where to look before purchasing and things to consider. So let's get started. In our journey, when we were researching cattle breeds to pursue for our small acreage homestead here, we had considered things like mini Jerseys or lowline Angus. After we got Dexters, we also heard of South Pole, which has an interest to me, although they are not known like the Dexter is, at least from what I've heard, for being able to be a good milker. So again, in alignment with a lot of what we do here at Homestead Citadel, getting into Dexters was from an angle of dual purpose. So of course beef. One of the things that really stuck out to me when we were doing our research is, and it might be getting a little dated at this point, but we had found an article where in a double-blind taste test, the Dexter beef was actually rated some of the highest quality beef in the world, which certainly piqued our interest. So most new homesteaders face a situation where you've got maybe 3, 5, 10 acres of pasture and you're not sure what to do with it. You think you want to get cows. One of the key characteristics most homesteaders consider when selecting for cattle is a dual purpose animal. You want an animal that provides good beef, but you also may have an interest in pursuing a family milk cow at some point. There's a lot of information out there and there's a lot of choices to consider. For us, we went with the Dexter breed and we couldn't be happier with that decision. One of the key components for us, we came into cows after running sheep for several years, so the size of the animal was definitely at the forefront of our consideration. We were also concerned that the larger cows would have a negative impact on our pasture, creating a significant muddy mess during mud season, in the fall, winter, spring time frame. What we found, even with I think we were up to 15 head this year, we never really saw a significant mud season with these animals because they have such a gentle imprint on the ground when they're moving about, because they're not a really heavy animal. I think our bull is probably in the 1,000 to 1,100 pound range. The truth is, those large, heavy framed, beefy animals, they were bred and designed specifically to meet the needs of the industrial beef processing facilities. Those facilities are designed to to accept a certain size carcass, and they're not necessarily ideal for most small acreages. So for us, we definitely knew we wanted a smaller framed animal. We were looking at mini Jerseys and Dexters. The big reason that we decided to go with the Dexter side is because we've heard all these scary stories about how Jersey bulls can be very aggressive and very dangerous to be around for family and kids. While that's certainly a possibility, that's also a possibility with Dexters. You need to make sure you're keeping an eye on temperament when you're selecting your animals. Speaking of which, this is my herd bull here right behind me, CJ. Have absolutely no concern with him when I'm in the pasture. I do keep an eye on him, particularly when a cow is in heat. He has a tendency to be, a typical bull. He doesn't want anything to get in the way with him breeding, but he's never shown any sign of aggression whatsoever with me, my family, and my kids. So he is a fantastic herd bull, the perfect temperament for what a homesteader should be looking for, in my opinion. And I also really like the fact that he is short. I'm 5'11", and he stands just about belly button height on me. And for a small farm, that is like a perfect size for a bull for us. He has a very, very good pronounced back end. That's one thing, following a lot of the Dexter groups out there, a lot of breeders are looking for a more rounded and pronounced back end, because that's where your best meat comes from. And he checks that box for sure. So as I've mentioned, we were very interested in Dexters because of their performance on grass alone. Dexters are known for hitting 400 to 500 pounds, potentially even a little bit more of a hanging carcass weight when you go to process them, and it makes for a great sized carcass for a family looking to put beef in the freezer. And to do it on grass alone is very, very important. It takes 2 to 2.5 years to finish a Dexter on grass only, whereas if you were to do that with a lot of these other breeds out there, you'd be looking at probably closer to 3 years to really truly properly finish an animal on grass only. One thing worth noting, if milk production and a family milk cow is your interest specifically, it probably applies to all breeds, but especially with Dexters, you want to make sure that you get a line that's known to being a good milker. Because there are people, being a dual purpose animal, there are people that are selecting more for the beef characteristics, and there are certainly some out there that are selecting more for the milk characteristics. So if milk is important to you, I would definitely recommend you look for and ask around for Dexters that align with what you are specifically looking for. On that note as well, it is very much worth the price you pay to have a trained, especially if it's your first time, to get a trained milk cow, one that's already used to being haltered, put in a head gate, hands around the udder, that kind of thing. It really it actually allows the cow to train you to some degree as far as what the cow is expecting. We did not select lines by any means specifically with milk in mind, but there are definitely some Dexter breeders out there that are doing exactly that. And if we wanted to shortcut our journey into a milking line, we would look into buying in an animal specifically for milking. One of the other prominent breeds that we looked into were Jerseys. Jerseys are notorious for being classified based on their size. I don't even remember off the top of my head how many different sizes there are. Minis and larger jerseys, full-size jerseys for like actual industrial, dairy farm production and things like that. So if that's a avenue you're going, pay close attention to the size of the animal, and what they're measuring is the height of the animal to the top of the hip in inches, and that will determine the classification. The one thing to keep in mind with Jerseys is they are capable of producing an awful lot of milk. However, from what we have seen and from what our research hinted at to us, was Jerseys require a little bit of grain in order to maintain that quantity of milk just because of the way they were bred. Um, they're a significantly thinner looking animal by appearance, because of their more prominent dairy background. Another breed a lot of folks are probably considering, the past several years, is the Highland cattle. They are known because of their appearance. They have longer hair. They look a certain way, kind of shaggy. They never really piqued our interest. We've never really been one to follow what's trendy. We've done things with fairly decent intentionality over the years, so Highlands never really were something that we seriously considered. If you're in the South, I would definitely not recommend getting Highlands, just because I would be fearful that it's too warm for them. They are very much a cold hardy breed, and according to breed standard, they should thrive on grass as well, similar to a Dexter. Other breeds may also be suitable for small homesteads that we're not going to cover here. I'm not going to certainly cover all of them. I don't have experience with very many cattle breeds personally. I've been around a few other farms that have had cows, including Angus and some other dairy, full-blown dairy production animals. But ultimately selecting a breed comes down to personal preference. There's not really one breed to solve be the answer for every homestead. What works for me here in the Appalachian Mountains of Pennsylvania may not work for somebody in an arid climate, or vice versa, certainly. So keep that in mind as well. Don't do what other people are doing. It's important to look around at what other producers and homesteaders are doing in your region and what's working for them, because that is a good indicator of what would probably be the most successful for you. I did also want to touch on some tips as far as how to find a good quality animal. The first place that we always start when we're looking at bringing in livestock is finding like a breed association type group or a breed registry to see what those organizations have available as far as resources for their breed. We found that the Dexter breed has several different registries right now, kind of going through some quarrels, or however you want to put that. I'm personally not too particularly interested in the registration side. In my opinion, actually, some of our best animals are not registered and not registerable because they're closed registries. So whether or not an animal is registered should not be of significant importance, in my opinion. And I would also err on the side of staying away from that, simply because you're kind of more welcome. You have to be a little bit more welcoming potentially for regulations and rules and things like that. So if you want to, as a homesteader, if you want to kind of continue to separate from the government and surveillance systems around us, and those systems are ever changing, you might actually want to prefer an animal that is unregistered. But those are the first places we check for high quality animals. We've never bought anything at a livestock auction or anything like that. We check out local producers after we find a breed association that we like, and then start looking around. We'll keep an eye on like Facebook groups and like Craigslist ads and stuff like that. When we go to visit, we're always asking a lot of questions. We're being very observant of how the animals are being treated, how they're being raised, the conditions upon which they're living in, and trying to align where they are with how we intend to manage them here. So for us, we got pretty fortunate with these Dexters, where with the exception of the first 3 that we brought in, the other ones were already grass-fed, and we quickly were able to move our first 3 over to grass-fed because their grain consumption was very limited at their maiden farm. So yeah, living, what are the conditions like? What are the production practices and management practices of where you're looking for animals? I definitely don't recommend livestock auctions because all sorts of diseases and issues can prop up going through that. Not to mention the stress to the animal. So things to keep in mind when looking for livestock. So the breed that you select and the animals that you ultimately end up purchasing comes down to personal preference and your specific management system and what's available to you locally. But all that said, have you even asked the question, are cattle even right for my homestead? Or am I even ready for cattle? If those are the things that are still going through your mind, I highly suggest that you check out our video from a month or so back where we walk through a 4-part framework for selecting the right livestock for your homestead. That video will be linked in the cards above. In that video, we will discuss like a natural transition that any piece of land or pasture will go through, progressing from potentially brush to, more of a grass-based pasture. That's something that we experienced here. We didn't have brush per se, but the quality of the pasture was not significant. It was a lower quality pasture that we had to work up to in order to be able to feel like we could run cows successfully here. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more homesteading content where we intertwine education with our real-world experience. Drop a comment, tell me what breed you're thinking about and any points I may have missed. What's your favorite breed out there? If you're curious what kind of infrastructure is important to run cattle on a homestead, in last week's video we did a homestead tour where we highlight some of the infrastructure that we use here to rotationally graze our cattle across our roughly 20 or so acres that we have within our grazing system. So check out that video up in the cards. We really appreciate you watching here at the Homestead Citadel, and we'll catch you on the next one.